Zombie scrolling, doom scrolling, brain rot. If the boomers are to be believed, then social media and YouTube are eating young people's brains alive. Kids are supposedly spending hours zoning out to Skibidi Toilet or Tun 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 Sahur, unable to sleep or focus in school. On the surface, this is a problem. But what if I told you that these videos are harmless when compared to a far more damaging type of content that's been lurking online for years? I'm talking about videos that have been proven to cause more harm to your focus and well-being than any brain rot or viral meme ever could, actually. YouTube channels like Nexpo, Lazy Masquerade, and Nick Crowley have been pumping out these spine-chilling stories and found footage nightmares for decades. Rather than the low-effort, addicting brain rot that numbs kids' brains, these videos invade your subconscious, stirring primal fears that echo long after the screen goes black. Studies show that they can sabotage your sleep, spark hidden anxieties, and crush your daily grind, unlike anything else. And thanks to YouTube's algorithm, once you're hooked, it'll keep you coming back for more. Get ready to have your minds blown. This is how horror destroys your productivity more than brain rot. It's a familiar story, right? You're only meant to watch one video before getting on with the housework or finishing a project. Maybe a quick video before going to bed. But the thing is, right? Hours later, you're still watching. Everything's just in a blur. Your mind's wide awake and your heart's maybe racing. It used to be that horror's confined to books, cinema, and TV. Consuming horror was this event that you geared yourself up for. Now, though, it's personalized, right? Algorithmically tuned and waiting for you any time of day or night on YouTube. There's no shortage of horror commentators either. From Mr. Ballin with his 10.5 million subscribers and over 550 videos, to Mr. Nightmare, Chilling Scares, and thousands more. I can go on for ages about it. But YouTube has become a horror playground, according to this Forbes article from 2024. With a rise in popularity that sparked a surge of creativity as creators explore new ways to frighten their viewers. And make no mistake, their sole purpose is to spook you into submission. And also grab your attention from true, unsolved mysteries, accounts of horrific crimes, and creepypastas that may or may not be based in reality, but feel as if they are. Short videos, often under an hour long, are perfectly designed for binge watching. Once you finish one video, another one's instantly recommended, so of course you click on it. But you don't need me to tell you how YouTube works. The question is, right, what is it about horror specifically that makes us want to subscribe for more? So according to Seeker, our obsession with horror comes from, quote, the physical and emotional release that follows scary situations, unquote. It's that fight or flight response that kicks in, which gives you a rush of adrenaline that many of us crave, because we're either too bored or we have nothing else to do. So when we hear stories about some axe murderer, for example, right, our brain amygdala identifies a threat. It then signals the hypothalamus, which triggers our fight or flight response. Both the amygdala and the hypothalamus form part of our subconscious brain, and the experience embeds itself emotionally. So this is different to watching comedy or brain rot videos, which might give us a quick dopamine hit, but it doesn't really awaken our primal instincts. So psychologist Glenn Walters points out three main factors that make horror so appealing. First is tension. YouTubers like Nick Crowley are experts at building mystery and suspense. They slowly build up the tension in their videos and really put you on edge, right, before delivering shock value, which often includes details of gore and horror, within YouTube's guidelines, obviously. The second factor that makes YouTube horror so appealing is relevance. Content creators prey upon something that is common to most of us, the fear of death and the unknown. They talk about stuff like cultural and social issues, and we become so invested in the story by identifying with the victims or condemning the villains. The third factor is unrealism. When we're watching horror videos, we know that the main purpose is entertainment. So we're willing to suspend our disbelief when it comes to fictional horror, and even in the case of true crime horror, since we're watching it play out through a screen, and our conscious mind tells us that there is no genuine threat to ourselves. It's the rush that we get from this adrenaline and endorphins that's addictive. It's like riding a roller coaster. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what you might think, but is it worth the cost to your entire productivity and mental health? So psychologists have been long invested in why people watch horror and the effects that horror has on the viewer. So this analysis of 35 journal articles found that horror lovers tend to be less empathetic, since, quote, Viewers with high levels of empathy should dislike horror films because they react negatively to the suffering of others, unquote. Now, I don't necessarily agree with this because it does seem like a very generalized take, but there are indicators that horror fans may be more aggressive than your average fan base, with some, but not all, seeking it out because it stimulates a sensory reaction. So even if you consider yourself to be empathetic, non-aggressive person, the emotions you experience while consuming horror can potentially negatively impact your thought process. If you've ever been in a scary situation, you know that it's hard to focus on anything else at the moment. You can't plan or create effectively when your brain's acting like there's a predator in the room. So in other words, do you think that if you were a deer, you'd be thinking about defending your harem if you were trapped in headlights? Yeah, no, exactly, right? You'll be thinking about how you can bolt out of there right away. That's because high emotional arousal, like fear, it impairs your working memory and complex thought. And because it stays with you, focusing on spreadsheets or study notes after watching a scary video can feel like it's impossible. Psychologists have tested this theory for decades, using what's called the trauma film paradigm. Participants who watch distressing scenes, not just horror movies, but even just emotionally charged videos, often report having unwanted thoughts about it days later. So it stays with you long after you've watched it. And it also stays into your subconscious, even if you don't feel at the time when you're watching it that distressed. A study from 2024 looked specifically at the relationship between violent YouTube videos and found that it increased stress, depression, anxiety while reducing the viewer's self-esteem. The darker the content, the more dramatic these effects were. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that the fear that you experience while watching these horror videos doesn't just disappear when you close the app. It stays with you, right? It echoes through everything that you do afterwards for a few days. And even maybe weeks. It pulls your attention away from the present, and it stays in your memory. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who watches Nexpo or Mr. Ballin will end up being anxious and depressed, but there is a much higher chance that their content will eat away at you and affect your productivity for far longer than any brain rot will. This is especially true if you like to watch horror videos in bed, like me. You'll find it much harder to doze off because it takes a while for your brain to start firing threat signals. Because a lot of the times, even after you close your eyes, there's nothing to distract you anymore, so your subconscious emerges and you just can't fall asleep. The delay between lying down and falling asleep, known as sleep latency, it increases with horror, and every extra minute you stay awake cuts into that cognitive recovery that your brain needs to function properly the following day. Considering that 1 hour of screen use in bed can increase your risk of insomnia anyway, by as much as 59%, according to one Norwegian study, doubling down by watching horror may not be the smartest move. And remember, right, it's not just time spent watching these videos themselves. It's a snowball effect where the stress of watching leads to poor sleep, which then leads to reduced activity during the day. And during the day, a small amount of stress can actually sharpen your focus, but there's an optimal point after which stress starts to impair performance. This is known as the Yerkes-Dodson law. Horror pushes us far past that sweet spot, increasing our arousal to the point where complex thinking and creativity starts to collapse. The sad part is, being human, many of us choose to chase that endorphins and keep on clicking rather than doing things that will make us happier and successful in the long run. Plus today, we don't choose to be scared. The algorithm keeps us scared. So the thing is with YouTube, right, is that other than all the usual stuff that it does, like try to keep your eyes on the screen at all times and recommend you all these horror videos while you're in the rabbit hole, basically, it feels so personal. You know the storyteller's face. You know their voice, you know their upload schedule, and like that fear becomes part of a relationship that you build. These parasocial bonds, it heightens emotional response, and it means that the fear hits harder and sticks longer. Before you know it, your brain anticipates threat and keeps searching for it. It's a loop of tension and relief. Every single scare rewards you with dopamine, a chemical hit that teaches your brain to come back for more fear. So when brain rot distracts you with noise, horror hijacks your biology. Funny cat videos and memes bounce off the conscious layer, but a lazy masquerade creepypasta, it hits you deep. It replays in your dreams and daydreams, and shreds your focus, and it burns your mental energy long after the video even ends. It's no longer just entertainment, it's engineered stress, right? For millions of viewers, the symptoms are subtle, but you can easily see it. Irritability, mental fog, delayed reaction times, right? You can think you're just tired, but you might be experiencing mental fatigue from watching too much horror. So if that's the case, how do we escape? The point of this video is not to diss horror content creators. Horror can still entertain, inspire, and even heal sometimes, right? But in the wrong context, late at night, alone, exhausted, it harms instead of helps. If you want to enjoy horror without it destroying your productivity, there's so many things you can do. For example, you can limit your intake of horror videos to just one a day, turning off the autoplay function on YouTube, and dedicating certain hours to watching these videos versus just doing work. You can break the subconscious cycle by going for walks, writing a journal, or reading a book before bedtime instead of watching a horror video. Schedule focus blocks with intentional silence or background music that regulates instead of stimulates your nervous system. So in the end, fear doesn't just live in what we watch, it lives in what we allow to shape our minds. Every notification, every autoplay, every shadow on the screen competes for the same thing, which is your attention. But when you protect it, when you decide what enters your brain, you don't just reclaim your productivity, but your sanity as well. That'll be it from me for now. I'll see you guys in the next video. Happy Halloween!